I'm gonna have it here. Here you go.
You didn't even pretend.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to begin here shortly, so if you can ensure your cell phones are off or on silent. And council members, ensure your microphones are turned on. All right, so today's February 24th, 2025. Today's a regular legislative meeting of Barberton City Council. Before we begin our regular legislative meeting, we do have individual committee meetings this evening. Our schedule calls for parks, however, we're going to make an exception for that. We'll do rules, marketing, and development with Ms. Gearhart first.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to bring the Rules, Marketing, and Development Committee to order. It is Monday, February 24th, 2025, and it is 6:01 p.m. and we are in council chambers. All members of my committee are present, including myself as chair, Mrs. Beck as co-chair, Mr. Heidick, and President Greer. All their council members are noted, and everyone else is noted on my sheet. I have no requests for legislation at this time. I do have a special guest with me this evening, Mr. Gordon from the foundation. He's going to share with some stuff going on around town for us.
Hi, everybody. Thanks
Hi.
for inviting me to chat real briefly. So I have in my hand here 20 printouts, and I'll put these downstairs, Mayor said, on the table just to the left as you walk in, of the new grant programs that we've launched here recently from the foundation, which I know we've talked maybe a little bit about, or you've heard a little bit about them. But I appreciate having the chance to come here and share it all with you because I think they're pretty good programs to take advantage of. So there's two separate programs. One is funded where you can get a matching grant of up to $100,000. And that is for a retail or experiential retail or a restaurant business that wants to move into our downtown. So we're trying to understand that our buildings need some tender loving care. And we want to make that easier. But we also want to make sure that the businesses that are coming in know what they're doing. And so they're matching grants. So you can get up to $100,000 if you have $100,000 to match it. And you can use them for a variety of things, all of which are outlined on here. But the idea is just to encourage investment in our downtown and build out our downtown. A number of surveys we're seeing more stuff come in. People want to come downtown, they want to do things downtown, and we want to encourage that behavior, obviously. So the application for this opened on February 1st, and applications are available right now. They're on the foundation's website, but Main Street is operating this program, Main Street Barberton. So the best way to get involved is to contact Melanie Blackamato at Main Street Barberton, sit down with her, and she'll kind of go over the grant application, what the requirements are, help you get your initial questions answered, and then lead you to the grant application so that you can submit that grant, okay? So that's for downtown building rehabilitation. We also have a challenge grant available for restaurant and retail businesses that's a match of up to $20,000. And we have 5 of those grant awards available. So that's, again, a match up to $20,000. And the idea, again, is to encourage new businesses to move downtown. And there's a lot of things that this can be used for. It can be used for tenant improvements, equipment purchases, accessibility upgrades, even marketing is one of the potential uses for this grant. And if you are awarded one of the 2 $100,000 grants, you can actually also apply for this grant program and mix them together for a potential match of up to $120,000. So we did that intentionally because we want to encourage the right businesses, the right organizations to explore Barberton and remove any barriers that they may have from a financial standpoint. So their dollars go twice as far, potentially up to that $120,000 mark if they qualify for both grants. So I hope that you share my excitement with it. Applications open February 1st. They'll close April 1st. So now is the time to go and explore these things. There's information on mainstreetbarberton.com. Of course, you can call the foundation if you'd like, but the best way to get information is through Melanie Blackamato, because she is the one kind of with the levers and switches for this to make it go as quickly and efficiently as possible. Any questions about this program? Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Gordon, for coming in.
Yeah.
This is for new business, you said?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's our target.
thank you.
Yeah.
Are licensing that are required for certain businesses included in these grants for expenses?
Not specifically called out one way or the other.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Gerhardt, did you have a question?
Actually, Mr. Greer
Yes.
grabbed it before me. I knew you had said the 100,000 was for new. I was confirming the other one was also. Awesome, okay.
Yep.
Have you had anybody apply yet?
Yeah, we have 7 applicants right now.
Wow.
Which we're pleased with, yeah. But it's a competitive grant, and it's a decent amount of money, right? So we'd like to see as many applicants as possible, right? So we're really in a position to help somebody who's motivated and capitalized to take advantage of everything downtown Barberton has to offer.
That's awesome.
If you have any other questions too, obviously you can contact me. My door is always open. You all know that. Gil Gonzalez at the foundation also has some, he can answer some questions about this. An update on him, for years we've been focused on economic development at the foundation. We've actually changed his title recently to Special Projects, Director of our Special Projects. And the idea behind it is we're entering a period of strategic planning at the foundation. And one of the things we've discovered in our preparation process for our strategic plan is that economic development is a term that's kind of used like Kleenex. And if you say, well, what kind of Kleenex? Was it Puffs with lotion or was it Kleenex? They're different products, right? Economic development is different than community development. And we've always, I think, used them collectively as if they mean the same thing, and they don't. So what I've done is, worked with Gil to say we have some community-type projects that we're working on that Gil's in charge of, some of which are really exciting, including the development of this program. But we need to have our strategic planning process to better understand our role and where we fit. Like a good example of this is, how do you measure economic development? Like productivity throughput from the factories in a city. Now, as a foundation, a charity, we don't have the levers and switches to affect productivity, right? That's more of a function of a city government, right? So we need to stop confusing matters, which is why we'll pull back to special projects and then explore through our strategic planning process exactly what that should be, and then go full force. But we're still doing these type of projects. We're just going to educate ourselves, educate the community, and align it so it's doing it the right way and we're not confusing anybody. All right? Any questions on that?
No, I appreciate you explaining all that and
Sure.
excited to see all that's coming to Barberton.
Yeah, well, my door's always open, so if you have questions, shoot me a call or an email or a text, and happy to chat with you. All right?
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
We don't have any pending legislation or appointments. Do I have any miscellaneous discussion? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:09 PM.
Thank you, Ms. Gerhardt. All right, we'll hop back on our schedule, and we'll do City Properties, Parks and Recreation with Mr. Eastling.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a special City Property Parks and Rec meeting February 18th, 2025, 6:07 here in council chambers. All members were present and those noted on the sheet. We had a request for legislation. It was a letter from Michael Teodecki, our city engineer, requesting legislation to enter into contract with the contractor for the demolition of city-owned building located at 107 Fifth Street, formerly Masonic Temple, Emergency wording is requested. At this time, I would like to request a second reading. With that, does anyone have any remarks?
So you should have
Oh, yes, that's, I'm sorry. Okay, start over. Thank you, Mr. President. Today, February 24th, 2025, at 6:11 PM here in council chambers. All members are present and other council members as noted, along with others noted in the galley. We have no request for legislation at this time. We do have pending legislation. It's to enter into a demolition contract, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, his designee, to enter into contract with the contractor for the demolition of the city-owned building at 107 Fifth Street and declaring an emergency. And with that, I'd like to request a second reading. Does anyone have any remarks? Anyone in the galley? Mr. Teodecki, would you like to speak?
So I'm just curious why we would push it out of their unanswered questions that we have. I mean, I know I answered some of your questions today. Are there other questions still forcing this to go for a second read?
I'll answer with what I've heard, and then I'm not going to point anyone out, but there's a couple what-ifs and could-bes and may-nots, and I think just with the grant hanging out there unanswered, and we have 2-3 weeks before we actually get a definite answer on that grant, I think it's just an unknown that some people just don't want to vote on at this time. Yes. Mr. Teodecki?
So I just want to point out that we could get an answer tomorrow. We could get an answer a week from now. We could get an answer 2 weeks from now. I'm going to point the scenario. If we get an answer tomorrow, this best positions us to give the contractor as much time as possible to get as much work done as possible so that we can recoup out of the grant monies a higher value. If we do wait 2 weeks or 4 weeks, that shortens the time frame of work that can be completed, of which would be able to be recouped from the grant. So this legislation really positions the city to be able to award the job as soon as we can. Yes, we want to know if we've got the waiver, which will allow the grant. But in addition, if the waiver is not passed, it would come from the city. And I think Jeremy has put out also a load of information on how the project still fits into the funding scenario of the project to allow it to continue to proceed. So, the waiting, if it isn't awarded versus kicked down the road, there are costs associated with keeping a building or rebidding the building in the future. Speaking with the contractor this morning, they did talk about even moving the project in the future past May. The union labor contract will start May 1st, of which they anticipate, without a signed agreement, they don't know, but they're anticipating at least a 5% increase just in labor costs alone, let alone they don't know what fuel costs are or anything like that in the near future, which may not affect it much, but it could potentially be higher in the future. So with all those scenarios, I still think this allows us the best position passing to be able to capitalize on this grant money with the biggest window of opportunity. So,
Mr. Harris?
Mr. TJ, did you say 2 to 3 weeks on the SHPO grant? Or,
well,
I mean, did they give you
when we
a...
first submitted, they said, give us 30 to 45 days. That doesn't mean they need all that time. Their turnaround time, I think they're required to have things done in a 30-day window. Well, that 30-day window is like 2 weeks from now, but that doesn't mean on the 29th day, I hope that they don't beat it by 1 day. So we could hear sooner than the window that they told us. You know, I'm just giving kind of worst case scenario of what they said they would have something by, not that's the day they're gonna tell us.
And this was an appeal?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, it was an appeal which gave them all the information they asked for and required to make that decision.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Mayor?
I just want to remind everyone also that if this is passed by city council, it gives the city the authority to sign the contract. It doesn't force us to. So if it's passed tonight, as Mr. Teodecki said, they come in next week and say we're ready to go, or end of the week or whatever, and we get that waiver, we can sign the contract and keep moving forward. Timing is a huge issue here. Mr. Teodecki talked about the potential of cost increase moving down the road as we see everything goes up in cost. So timing is a big issue, and again, it gives the city the authority to sign the contract, but doesn't force us to sign it. We would obviously wait and see what happens, but don't want to wait 2 weeks for city council to have a second reading and something comes in tomorrow, or, you know, later this week or next week, or we're just not sure of that window.
Yes, Ms. Gerhart?
Was part of the desire to wait for demo until it was closer to this building starting the project?
No, in the ideal world, that's probably what me and Mr. Teodecki talked about that today, about if this building was tore down, how fast can a contractor come in and offset the waterproofing of the existing foundation, the air vapor barrier, the stucco that's required, the landscape. There's a lot of cost there, because I think the initial plan was we'll just get rid of this building, we'll kind of go down to the city building, then we'll come back to here, you know. As me and Mr. Decky was speaking today, we don't even have a contractor, number one. So once they talk to that contractor, is the contractor going to want to just stay here, demo, excavate what needs excavated and build, or are we going to demo, close it all off, and come back and visit it 8 months, 10 months, 12 months down the road? That's some of the questions that I'm getting, and we don't have answers to. So even, we don't know. So until, we're stuck.
Yeah.
It's a rock in a hard place. I mean,
Okay.
no one's right, no one's wrong. My lean to their side is, if we don't take advantage of the state money, we could be out of it completely at a later date. The other thing is, we don't want to mismanage anything, you know. It's still funds. And that's my, and I'm willing to back anyone who isn't comfortable, so. Mr. Mayor, is there, you said if it's passed, it doesn't mean you have to sign something. Is there any kind of assurance? Can you just speak a little bit more on that, as far as, or Mr. Teodecki, either one, or both, take turns?
So real quick, to partially answer your question, we would not start any demolition before we knew whether we had the waiver or not. We wouldn't tear a building down and then ask them for a waiver for a building we're already tearing down. So we will not start until we know for sure whether we have that or not. But the day we find out we're successful, we would want to be in a position to award, probably at a special board of control, get the contract and move forward to give the contractor the biggest window. So that will be how we would proceed with this. And if, I hate to play the scenario if we don't, but if we don't, we would then have a long conversation with the contractor to find out how long they might hold their pricing. And if that does go past when we know what's going on with making the whole project whole, with the foundation and the rest of the funding piece, we would try, like you and I talked today, how might we better position ourselves to time those a little closer so that we don't have the added cost of some of the items we talked about. And those costs were added in there in part by Planning and Design Review Board, because what we don't want to do is tear down a building and have a hole in the ground and a ugly side of a building for 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. What is that point of, that cost is roughly $20,000 to $30,000 in savings by doing that. If it's very temporary, have those discussions if we don't get the waiver. And if it's too far down the road, do we take a chance and rebid it? Those discussions can come in after we find out, should we not get the waiver. But we definitely can't proceed until we know for sure we do have the money, because we can't be tearing down a building while we're asking for a waiver. Hopefully that clears up a little bit of chicken and the egg there on funding and starting.
Did I do a good job answering your question through Mike? Yeah, I mean, if it's approved tonight, it goes to Board of Control, and we'd have those discussions. Obviously, we'd rather use grant money for public purposes than our own money. Get everything aligned, so if the waiver comes through, we're ready to go. If, for some reason it doesn't come through and we have to rebid this, the cost could go up. So that's where the timing comes in, and we would never sign the contract if we have to rebid it and all that, so.
What do you think the time from demo start to where you could actually have boots on the ground on the new part of the construction? Because we're almost there as far as cost. So, I mean, we've got a pretty short list of who we're going to use. What do you think the actual time, it could be in months, from, okay, we're going to tear this down to when we think we could actually get a contractor on site to maybe offset some of those? Because you could do the shell with everyone, even then, we could do it now. And that's kind of my question, instead of waiting.
I mean, I hesitate.
Not trying to get it closer together to where maybe we can offset some of that additional backfilling and waterproofing and plastering. And that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I hesitate to put a time frame on that, because between now and October, there's 100 steps, right? And I don't know how long it takes for bond counsel to come through. I don't know the process for a lot of these, because this is the first, kind of a first for the city. So they could go pretty quickly, they could, take quite a while. So I hesitate to really put any type of time period towards that.
Okay. So it could be lengthy.
It could be, yeah.
Okay.
I think Mr. Greer has a question.
I'm sorry, Mr. President?
Thank you, Chair. So this is, I'm hearing timely, and then some of the meetings I heard, the waiver, if we do get this waiver, the reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason it's important to the city to get this waiver and be able to flip that switch and go if we do get it, is because there's a deadline that time has to be used, and it's super, super, super short, from what I'm understanding. Right? Is it May 1st that the demo has to be complete, or we're in violation of that money?
The end of April, correct.
End of April? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. It is a progressive from what I understand, so we'll be able to draw on whatever we use, so it's not an all or nothing. At least we have that. Is there any other remarks? Yes, Ms. Beck.
So the part that you're worried about kind of almost doesn't really have anything to do with what we're voting on tonight, though. The cost of the, do you know what I'm saying? Like, we're saying enter into contract, but, you're worried about between $20,000 and $30,000, but waiting, we could miss out on $193,000, but then it would be 5% more, which is about 12,500-ish, a little bit more than that. I think we've kind of lost the plot here. over, I know that you're a nickels and dimes guy. You know, I
No,
appreciate that about you.
It's not even
But-
that. It's, if we have time for other people who have questions that haven't asked them here tonight, to get their answers before they're forced to vote on something they just don't totally understand. That's, and if we have 2 to 3 weeks prior, it may be shorter, like Mr. Teodecki said, it could be tomorrow. But going off the original 30 to 45 days, he's got at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the answer's due back.
Right.
So to vote with people with questions early when we have the time to get the answers, it's a courtesy to those people, and that's the only reason. I'll vote tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following along
Yeah.
all of your emails and have done the math along with, you know, everything that's been said. You know, we're gambling with kind of a lot, losing out on a lot of money, trying to line up dominoes that we don't have, that are out of our control to
Right.
line up.
And
You know, that
also-
happens to me all the time in my business. I do my best to line up dominoes all day long, and when they don't fall right, it's out of my control.
Right.
And this is the same thing.
Yes. And the grant, even if they pass and enter in a contract, it only pays till the end of April.
Right.
And once again, if they only get 25% of it done, you're only getting 25% of the grant.
True. I mean,
Yeah,
we
so,
can
yeah.
worry about those things all day long, you
Well,
know?
But back to what I said, I'm only willing to push this off because other people had questions that they don't have answers to.
Let's ask them.
That's why we brought this up. I'm willing, from the conversations that we've had, to vote on this tonight.
I think we should.
It was a courtesy for those who had questions for me to ask for a second reading. Yes, Mr. President?
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, if we don't vote on it tonight, we're not losing out on the money. It's when we can start the project or not.
Correct.
Within the two. Well, if we get it, we get it, whether we vote on it tonight or 2
Correct.
weeks. It's just when we can start that project.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, I'm going to just say, based on the reaction you've had here tonight, I say we vote on it if,
Okay.
bring it to the floor and vote on it.
I'll note it. We're good.
We have any miscellaneous discussion? Yes, Ms. Gearhart.
Thank you, Mr. Easterling. I unfortunately was not able to attend the Parks and Rec meeting. I just wondered if there was anything new and exciting that they shared.
No, it was actually really short because that was the father-daughter dance, and they were trying to get everyone out of there so that they could
Okay.
have their dance. But there is a field dedication for Bob Kurska, May 10th, I believe it is, at 3
Okay.
p.m. And other than that, all they did was they approved minutes. It was very, very, very short.
May 10th at 3 p.m.?
May 10th at 3 p.m., I believe.
And this is like the ball fields?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's for Bob Kurska.
PPG, Foundation, everybody calls them something different.
Yes, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair. If possible, Mayor, could you give an update? I saw them working on College Park today. Is there an estimated completion time for what they're doing?
I could give you some general updates, but we are fortunate tonight to have our street superintendent with us. And not to put him on the spot, but I'm going to, or you're going to put him on the spot.
Right.
He's been working on this diligently, so I know that he's got some updates.
Yeah. So we entered into contract with Nicholas Fence last Friday. I got an email that said if we didn't lock into that this Monday price would increase by 10%. Barberton Tree's going to start taking trees down the first week of March. There's 6 total trees with stump grinding.
We're going to VOC this week with Barberton Asphalt for the walking path parking lot. So moving forward. Hopefully, I think the bathrooms, Don said will be May 1st, May 2nd, somewhere in there. And then the pavilion after that.
And his crew has already taken out the existing fence. If you drove by, you saw that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other remarks? With that, motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. 6:31, we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Easterling.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll call the Public Welfare and Safety Committee to order. It is February 24th, 2025. Time is 18:31 p.m. All members of my committee are present, including myself as chair, Mr. Easterling as co-chair, Ms. Gerhart, Mr. Greer. All other council members are present, and guests are noted on my sheet. We have one request for legislation this evening, actually two. The first one is a letter from Chief Steve Iona, Barberton Fire Department, requesting legislation awarding a 3-year contract to Public Consulting Group to pay 10% of approximately $136,148 to be collected annually by them as listed on the request. One reading and emergency wording requested. Everybody saw the request and all the documents and all that good stuff. We have the luxury of having Chief Iona here. This is a new company, I guess. Chief, if you want to step up and kind of speak about it real quick.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. This came from our billing service, that they said we would qualify because of our high rate of Medicare and Medicaid transports. These transports don't pay as well as just regular insurance would. In some cases, on a $700-800 transport, it barely pays $150 on these. This is a state program through Medicaid, and it would allow us to rebill, and I think it goes back 2 or 3 years to recoup some of these costs. The amount that they have here would be very beneficial. It would help us keep our ambulances, up to snuff, because even 2 years of this we would be able to purchase a new ambulance with that. The cost being usually around $250,000. So again, it came from our billing agency that identified we would be able to qualify for this. So questions from this program? Yes.
Just to clarify that $136,148 is an estimation from them, correct?
Yes,
That
it is.
they could collect. It could be more, it could be a little less, and then we would pay 10% of whatever they collect.
That is correct.
Okay. That's my only question.
Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Chief. The money that would be collected that we pretty much missed out, will that money stay in the fire budget, or does that go to general fund, or where does that stay?
It would go back to the general fund, and then we could request it back.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. Also, I'll be referring this to finance. Can I get a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second, please?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. And then you see on our agenda here for a letter from Jamie Eisman regarding the police contract. We will deal with that at a later date. I know we have an executive session scheduled for next week to hear about it. And any miscellaneous from my committee? From council members? Gallery? And like the mayor said, we have our new street superintendent, Mr. Carr. If you guys haven't met him, say hi to him before he leaves. He's also in charge of the potholes. I will say they've been very good about getting on those. I know there's some safety issues regarding Hudson Run. I sent in some stuff today, made some phone calls. We got some of those fixed, some craters. So they're doing a good job. There's so many of them. So.
Just
Yes,
a
ma'am.
quick thing, I want to thank you for getting the ones on State Street, mowing them down and everything. That was, yes. So, I appreciate it.
So welcome. Any other questions? Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We're adjourned at 18:35.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. All right, we will do city utilities, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. City utilities, the time is 6:37. We're in council chambers. All my members of my committee are present. Myself as chair, Jennifer Hager, Emily Beck, and Justin Greer, and all others noted. We have one request for legislation to call for tonight. We have no pending legislation. We have a letter from Todd Shreve, Director of Public Youth Service, requesting legislation to allow the mayor to amend the electric supply agreement with Dynegy due to Dynegy submitting the lowest rate formulation via a request for proposal, RFP. Emergency wording requested. Please see request and supporting documents. Do I have any discussion on this? Or Mr. Shreve would like to read it?
Mr.
Maybe it'll be answered.
Yes.
So I want to start off by just saying that this is not an easy procedure, hasn't been an easy procedure. I've been on the phone several times. I do have our consultant, Mr. Eric Burns, here with us tonight. So he'll be able to answer anything that I can't, or hopefully anything that I can't. So with this program, and obviously if anybody's been paying attention to what the market is doing, the electric rates are going up. It's not unique to us. It's not unique to Ohio. It's all over. What it boils down to, and what I've been explained to that it boils down to, is generation. I sat down with our public consultant from Ohio Edison. She's told me the same story my consultant has. I've talked to NOPEC, which also provides energy. I've heard the same story from them. So regardless of the route we go, our rate will no longer be underneath 5 cents per kilowatt hour. It's just impossible. So I've went with our consultant and we've taken the lowest rate. We're looking at locking into a short term, which is a 12-month term. The 12-month term does not mean that you all have to participate in it. What it is doing is it's locking our city into a rate that is going to be lower than our general supplier. So First Energy, if you opt not to go with the aggregate, you will roll right over into a First Energy program, and what I'm hearing, it can be anywhere from 9 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour. With that being said, locking our aggregate in at 8 point whatever, which is a rolling rate. This is a traded, constantly moving rate. From the time that I negotiated and talked to him in January, it went from 8.42 to last Friday 8.9 something to just today 8.7. So it's not like it's a fixed rate either. Like I'm trying to lock us in. And the sooner, that's why there's emergency wording, the sooner we can pass legislation, sign a contract, we get locked into a rate. The other thing is that as a citizen or a homeowner, you can shop for your own. Emily posed a question today. I tried to call you like 15 minutes before council started as I was driving back here. And she got online, went to Apples to Apples, and Apples to Apples will compare what's offered now. You can get on there and look right now, and there are rates that are lower, but that is something that's outside of the aggregate program that a homeowner would have to go and sign up on their own, opt out of our aggregate, and go that route. So I mean, that is also a possibility. There's nothing saying that everyone has to go with the city rate, but I want to save the people that don't want to mess with it, that want to just roll right into a city managed aggregate program. I want them to save as much as they can also. Trying to think, Emily, what else was in your email?
What else was in there? I did some more looking. So actually, Ohio Edison is offering $7.99 for theirs as of today. But what you're saying is it's not 8.42 anymore, it's 8.9 now?
It's actually 8.7. It was 8.9 Friday, 8.7
okay, gotcha.
now.
Okay.
And that's, the letter should have read estimated rate of
Right.
8.42. I think estimated got left out of the copy I sent Lori, because
Yeah.
that rate, like I said, it is moving.
Right. I mean, I know that these rates are gonna go up no matter what. Now, let me ask you this, when we got the 4.9, how many years ago was that? How many years ago was our last one?
So
Or,
that
last aggregate?
so that was discussed in November of 2020. Contract was signed just after the first of the year 21. Took
2021.
effect May of 21.
Okay, so we've kind of like doubled in the last, was that 4 years? 4 years, more or less. I'm only struggling with, there's some better rates that are offered for a longer amount of time. So I'm wondering.
Well, the other thing that you have to look at.
Should we ask for this to be longer? Do you know what I'm saying?
What happens in 12 months if the market dips? Again, that's the gamble. That's the gamble.
Right.
So, I mean, I agree with you. I've asked all of these questions, and Eric and I have sat down, and I've got rates from those same suppliers for longer. And believe me, this isn't something that I want to sit down every 12 months and have to rack my brain about, but at the same time, I don't want anybody to pay more money than what they have to. And if it is locking in for shorter and hoping, again, that the market fixes itself, or that they build, so again, generation, I'm being told it's generation. I sat down with our Ohio Edison consultant. She said that there's rumor that they're looking at building a generation plant. So the more plants that you have, the more power that's available, it tends to bring costs down. And I don't remember, Eric, am I kind of explaining that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, because we had these discussions, and Eric's, I'm sure, tired of me sending him an email, what about this, or how about that, or, a lot of times he picks the phone up and calls me then. I send an email, and within 15 minutes, I know it's going to ring, and it says Independent Energy Consultants on my phone, and it's Eric talking to me about this. And with that, I know you asked, why, and I asked Eric today, why, if there's more people, why can't we get a lower rate?
Sorry. Exactly, yeah.
So that kind of boils down to, we aren't the only ones gambling. The suppliers are gambling on the price, and that generation is going to be able to stay there, and the load's not going to change. And so when you're taking a large pool of people, if you end up losing with one customer, so I offer you 7.5, and everybody else is paying 8.5, and it goes to 9, I'm losing more with you. So if I do that across the entire city, with something that's as volatile as the electric right now, and that's why they don't want to commit to that lower rate with more people, because it can be good for them, or it could also go the opposite direction and be bad for them.
Yeah, I mean, I know they have an entire floor of people that watch the weather pattern. They pay a lot of money to look into the future to figure this out, so.
I agree with that also.
Okay,
But you're also in the housing market, so do you know what the housing market's gonna do in 12 months?
I wish.
You know, so.
I wish. I have a pretty good idea, but.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that that's a fair comparison, though.
Yeah. We may look like heroes in 6 months, we might look like real dunce caps. So, I mean, I know for me, this is gonna raise my bill about $30 a month, but I am well under the national average of usage. So, it's just a little bit like, oof, that's a big jump, guys, and we're gonna be, a little bit, some people will be cranky a bit, but are we saving them from something? I don't know.
Like I said, those are all concerns that I've had right along with you.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah,
This
fine.
is just a 12-month, you said?
So we're looking at locking into a 12-month fixed, yes.
Okay. Because I was looking at it earlier and I saw 36-month, same company for that rate that you have on the sheet here. I was just wondering.
And again, like, if we know that the market's gonna continue to climb, 36 months at that same rate would be great, you
Right.
know?
I think they had a monthly fee on that one.
But,
No, there's,
No, not in
no,
that
because I
one.
was looking at that to see if there was any opt-out fees or
I
any
looked at, no opt-out fees and no monthly fee.
pre-cancellation penalties.
so that's one thing, with participation in the aggregate, there isn't any, early termination fees, there's, it's completely voluntary by all of the citizens. So again, if they want to shop their own electric rate with their own supplier, I mean, they're free to do that. There are caveats to some of those programs, though. You might get a lower rate, but you're paying $15 monthly to have that lower rate, or, there's service fees or things like that also. So Thomas, did you have a question?
Yes, just, our contract runs out in May of this year, correct?
Yes.
What's the default scenario if we just don't have a program?
So again, you go back to your supplier, so that would be First Energy, and you're at whatever their standard rate is, which again, I'm hearing is projected between 9 and 12.
So if we don't do, what do you think, it just defaults?
Right to the 9
The
to
next
12,
day.
yes, yep.
Okay, thank you.
That's my understanding, correct, Eric?
Thank you.
Yes, President Gray.
I'm gonna make a little joke. How good are you at stock markets? Because this is how it's similar. So if we're at 5 right now, roughly, that, you've answered my question, by the way. It was, where we're at. That's a 60% increase in rates if it is 8 cents instead of the 5 cents. And we still have some time on our current aggregate. If we approve this for whatever rate, would you sit on that? Because we're putting our faith in you that you're good at the stock market, right? That you're gonna buy in at the lowest, today, because you just said Friday was 7%.
Friday was 8.9,
yeah.
and today's 8.7, so yes.
Are you gonna go back and hit the button right away?
So I've had several conversations with Mr. Burns back there. Hey, you gave me 8.42. Like, I have that on paper. Like,
Yeah,
can we stay there? And the problem is the supplier. And it's
Yeah.
not, Eric would love to. He would love to give me that rate. But it's not up to him, it's the supplier. And again, we accepted prices from 4 different suppliers. So, I mean, it's not like we just went and asked one. So we did have 4 different suppliers, and Dynegy was the lowest rate at the 12-month term.
Yeah, well, I'm not questioning, I know you're gonna go back and you're gonna shoot for the lowest rate, because
Yep.
it won't have a rate attached to this, basically, if it's passed, the way that you mentioned, there would, at the lowest rate we can find.
Yep.
There's a lot of fly-by-night of these companies, supplier companies, coming in. What's the standing with this company?
So Dynegy was previously Energy Harbor. So
Okay.
Dynegy purchased out Energy Harbor. Energy Harbor's been our supplier at least for the last 4 years, maybe longer. So I mean, I believe it's not a company that's gonna go anywhere. If anything, again, I would assume it's publicly traded, it would probably change names at
Yeah.
most again.
Yeah, and just want to reiterate, this is voluntary. If it's too high or the market dips and people want to jump ship, go somewhere else, and that's what they can do. Yeah. But anyways, I just want to say I appreciate it. Hopefully you're I know you're in it for the best price.
Yeah.
I was just
Absolutely.
messing with you, but it is like the
Hey,
market is crazy.
The lights get turned on here too.
You know,
so
it's, yeah, it's nuts that, we're having this conversation. That market's so volatile right now, so, thank you.
Any other questions for me or Mr. Burns? All right. Thank you, Chair.
Mrs. Beck, when you checked on apples to apples, what was that? Was that a contract term? The length?
I searched by no monthly fee and no cancellation fees.
Right.
It went from 6 months, some of them were 3 months, up to 24 months. Looked like the juiciest ones was Energy Harbor for .070 for 6 months. Ohio Gas and Electric had 7.8. Dynergy, is this the name of this company? Had a 12-month for 7.5. So, same companies are offering lower, just so you know.
Thank you. Do we have any more remarks? Gallery,
I was gonna just say though, with that too, if you sign with them right now, you're gonna start paying 7.5 today, where you've got 4.97.
That's very true.
through
Yeah,
You're right.
that's very true.
Again, a gamble, you know, if we knew what the stock market was gonna do, you know? So I just kinda wanted to bring that to your attention too, so.
Start charging batteries.
Solar.
We don't have any more remarks. We have miscellaneous for utilities. If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Can you call for this?
Oh, yeah, I want
We want to.
Okay, I'd like to call, do we have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Hager. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Motion passes. Now, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Beck.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 52. Thank you. Take that out fast.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. All right. It's like the 7th inning stretch. Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. It is Monday, February 24th, 2025, 6:53 PM here in council chambers. All members of my committee are present, which includes myself as chair, Mr. Heidig as co-chair, Mr. Griffin, and Mr. Greer. All other council members are also present, as well as guests as noted on my sheet. We have several pieces of pending legislation. The first being our budget, which will be the, we're not voting on that tonight, obviously, we're still reviewing the budget. If it's okay, I would like to just review everything else that we will be voting on tonight before we get into the budget discussion. Okay.
Only if you read them all.
Okay. Okay, so we've got ordinance number 24-2025. We will be voting on this tonight. This is a note ordinance. I will go ahead and read it. This is for a meter reading system replacement project. The ordinance provides for the issuance and sale not to exceed $225,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring and installing advanced radio metering system equipment to be used in connection with the municipal sewer and water systems. And that's declaring an emergency. Are there any remarks on that? The next one, I'm not going to read this whole one. This is not to exceed $25,000, and this would be for the reconstruction and improvement of the trickling filter system at the municipal wastewater treatment plant, also declaring an emergency. I'm just going to go through these, and if anybody has any questions, just shout it out, okay? Next, we have not to exceed $1,600,000. This is for paying costs of improving streets and roads in the city by resurfacing, reconstructing, paving, and making other improvements. Ordinance 27, 2025. This is not to exceed $1,300,000. This is to provide funds to pay costs of making improvements to the water system, including replacing water mains. Ordinance 28, 2025. This is not to exceed $325,000 of notes for the purpose of paying costs of improving the city's stormwater management system by constructing and improving stormwater drainage facilities, including but not limited to storm sewers, ditches, backflow prevention devices, wetland construction, catch basins, and other facilities for the retention and control of waters. Okay. And then lastly, for those, ordinance 29-2025, this is not to exceed $115,000, and this would be to pay costs of acquiring a front loader for use in carrying out functions of the road and storm sewer departments. All of those are with emergency wording and will be voted on this evening. Are there any remarks related to any of those? Okay, why don't we go ahead and jump back to the budget? And we can discuss that now.
All right, thank you, City Council. So we have, myself and Todd Shreve will be starting with the street operating fund. Again, I apologize, I don't know the page numbers, it wasn't printed on my phone here.
51,
51.
I think, roughly.
51?
That sounds about right.
That's not me. That's not my letters. I have 52. So it was,
Okay.
Somewhere around there. Estimation.
fire, go to fire. Do you remember what fire was?
After maintenance.
It's after the street capital improvement fund, so it's under special revenues.
Middle of the,
About the middle.
pretty close.
Roughly.
Yeah, page 50.
Estimation.
29 pages.
Right. Halfway's there. Close.
54 and a half.
Jeremy's like, I redid this with page numbers. This is not my problem anymore.
I numbered them, but I that's where you're 52.
What are we doing after streets?
Street capital or street operating?
We're doing
Street
street
capital was approved in October, or November, December.
Okay,
So it's right after that, street operating.
street operating, okay. You're close.
Street opera?
So is everybody there?
Oh, it's after street operating.
We don't.
I cut out some.
You were close, though. You said ish, so.
Yeah.
Right after the street capital.
So we were right, we got it.
So you'll see here, is everyone there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
So you'll see total revenue of $1.8 million, and that includes a transfer in of $650,000 into this, and you can see in the past that every year we transfer some money in for the operations there. Above that, you've got gasoline tax receipts, auto tax receipts, and then interest income as well. And then above that is the unencumbered balance carryover from last year. Personnel services, just over $1.3 million. That includes a number of employees there, just over $900,000. And then all the roll-up costs with health benefits, retirement, clothing allowance, gym reimbursement, those things, which are contractual. Under operation and maintenance, pretty standard throughout, in comparison to previous years. So we've met and talked about kind of some, with Mr. Carr taking over in the street department, his career has been in the street department, so we trust in what he says and how he does it, because he knows from being there. So we've had some good conversations about some expectations and how this budget aligns with those expectations. I guess the big thing, which I had mentioned the other day, or other week, on the back side of that, which would be, I guess, 52, or excuse me, 54, would be under the capital outlay. I'm sorry, that's not in the capital outlay there. Yes, it is. I'm sorry. The print's a little small here. Equipment and furnishings, $100,000 for a new paver. As I mentioned the other week, the street capital fund, that brings in money. We pave our streets with that. The way it was worded was we can't use that money for potholes. We can't use that money for strip paving. It's for curb-to-curb resurfacing of the road, right? So there's some limitations there, but we sold it that way because we didn't want the money to be eaten up by potholes. We wanted to pave roads. But we also understand that the amount of money that comes in each year doesn't get you as far as it once did with the cost of asphalt going up. The paver that we have now could use historic plates on it. It's that old.
True.
So, hat goes off to our mechanics and everyone at the street department that keeps it running, but it's time for a new paver. And this goes in line with, kind of some of the incremental equipment that we've bought over the years, the skid steer and some of those things that help us maintain our roads until we can get there to repave the full road. So $100,000 for a new paver. $20,000, that was the concrete thumper and the trailer?
Yes.
So the trailer for the skid steer, right? And then we've got the lease on the debt service, $47,100, and the interest is $7,500 on that. Now, what's not in here is a 5-ton dump truck, which we'll lease starting this year and hit the budget next year. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you. Can you remind me, I'm blanking on it, what took us so far over budget in equipment and furnishings last year?
I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head.
Okay. And then what are they gonna do with $45,000 in buildings and other improvements?
So that's going to be some patchwork on the roof of the building down there.
That one that's back, like the, when
Off
it
of
doesn't,
Brady Avenue.
it's snowing in that one?
Not the tank barn.
Oh, okay, couldn't remember the name of it.
Yeah, there's several buildings down there. Yes.
Since you bring up the tank barn, any word on that?
Not
know what
right
we're
now.
doing with that yet?
We're cleaning up the yard still. I'm not sure last time you were back there. Cleaning the yard up quite a bit and continuing to move in that fashion, so.
So we don't know what we're doing with that tank barn yet?
We're discussing it. Did you have a question, Councilwoman?
Yeah, I do. The very top line on this page. Oh, never mind, sorry. It's so tiny I can't see. It's street repairing, never mind.
Forgot your magnifying glass.
I was using it in my office and I didn't bring it with me.
Sherlock.
I didn't look like Sherlock.
Any other questions? All right, if you go right next page, State Highway Fund. So this is pretty routine as well. I'm not sure if there's any questions. Pretty much everything is in line with previous years. Not much there. Goes for salaries of, I believe that's for the street superintendent. The State Highway Fund. I'm not sure if that's split between a number of employees.
Yeah, and what we do with the state highway fund is every quarter, we will reclassify a quarter of what's budgeted in that fund, and reclassify street wages and the benefits for it over to that fund.
Yes.
Mayor, can you kind of brief us on like where we get these funds from? Or maybe Jeremy can? I mean, gas tax, plate tax.
Yeah, gas tax. So I don't recall the breakdown of what the feds charge in gas tax versus what the state tax charges in tax and how that flows, because I know the federal money goes to organizations like AMATs, and that's how they give money out for projects like Worcester Road West. This, I believe, comes from the state, and that I'm not sure how much they tax. When you pay $3 for a gallon, I'm not sure how much.
I can't remember. I looked at it on the pump the other day, but something crazy.
So, but some of that money does come back. Any other questions? All right, the next page, if you turn over, is permissive license tax. So when you license your vehicles, some of that money comes back to the city for street work, but it can only be used on permissive classified streets. So it can't go on residential streets. So every street is classified a certain way. So it's a separate fund, has to be used for permissive streets. So these are main roads throughout the city, and I don't have the list memorized, but we'll use this fund for resurfacing at times. We'll use it for long line painting. You think of Robinson or State Street. So that's some of the uses for that fund. And you can see we've got some money allocated that we use throughout the city. Yes.
Professional services under this, it's a drastic increase from last year.
135.
Yeah. We budgeted $35,000 last year, spent $6,000, and then all of a sudden this year we budgeted $135,000. Do we know why?
Todd, is that the?
You have to let me look up what. I mean, we've discussed payment management. So that's essentially sending them out. It's what, 4 years old now, 5 years old now, where they score and video every road. We've discussed that. Let me look them on and make sure.
Okay.
At last
Thank you.
year, just to make sure that two lines didn't get combined.
I was just wondering because it's almost a $130,000 increase. That's what drew my attention to it.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question while Mr. Shreve looks that up? Thank you. Going down a little further, maybe because it's under capital outlay, the infrastructure street repair, looks like we didn't use much of our budgeted amount last year. Now we're gonna put more. Is that for a project?
Yeah, I mean, we budget money, prices change all the time, and, this is, I'm expecting, this is the first reading tonight, so you've got another 4 weeks before it passes. Prices could change from there, so we have to budget on the if and of what might happen with the prices. But I know that we've got some long line painting and other painting that our street crews can't do, that we're looking to get done this year, and also looking at some repairs on permissive streets that have taken a beating. So, hope I don't jinx us, but I hope that we're exiting the winter months here and that we can move into spring. Yeah, thank you.
So Bonnie, looking through my notes,
Yes, sir.
I do have it noted in here that we were going to use some money out of that for the pavement management. And if I remember off the top of my head, the last quote that Clay got was like $60,000, and that was to redo every road in town, and that also included a software that was it was more interactive, so it allowed us to track. So instead of paying somebody to come in and do all the streets again, if I pave 25th Street, I can add that to the software and it would update that. Now, eventually, maybe we could get to the point where we could get the cameras and actually go out and video that ourselves, but either way, the software would allow us to update and track better.
Does that do the concrete roads also?
It would do all of them, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So that's basically a software.
Software in the contract with pavement management systems.
Pavement Management Group is,
Or group.
Oh, it's a
and
group.
that's who we went with in the past. I believe that was who we got the quote from, but it may also been a different company, and that's why we were kind of hesitant. We wanted to vet them and make sure that we're, moving forward with the right.
Yeah, I do remember seeing, I think it was pavement management group that I saw.
Okay.
All right, on the next page is residential street resurfacing. This was the street resurfacing fund that was used prior to the passage of issue 8 in 2013, which created the street capital fund. So there's still $3,500 in there, not a lot of money. So that's, as you can see, we budget the money. If we need material, we can use that for it.
I just wanted to, I think Rebecca brought up the overage on the equipment. So Jeremy did some digging. So it was, what it was a prior year PO that got pushed to the 2024 budget. So it was encumbered, but it wasn't spent. So it was for the wheel loader. That was split between streets and.
Let me go back a page. I need to write wheel loader. Hold on. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so as Todd said, back in 2023, we opened the PO for the wheel loader.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't delivered until last year. We paid that expense last year, so the expense was realized in 2024. That's what's skewing it. It was about 105,000, so that's why it's completely skewed right now. That's, well, that expense number. Didn't go over budget. We stayed within budget. It just looks like it because it's a prior year PO.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I will turn it over to Mr. Weaver and Utilities. And I apologize, I don't have the page number for those.
Where's it at?
I don't know where he wants to start.
I'm going to start with page 105, and that's on the sewer fund.
All right, give us just a moment. Yeah.
I can do that.
Most of us don't have page numbers.
Oh.
I wasn't gonna waste the paper.
Just describe a little bit what that is. This is the, I'm starting off with the revenue funds, or with the revenue for the sewer fund, then it drops down into the administration fund. And
What does
so-
it say at the top of the page?
Sewage
Sewer
fund.
fund, yeah, it's under enterprise funds. So it's, yeah.
It's right after the stormwater management fund.
Ours looks like this, though. It's different than Lori's. We don't have a graph on
That's
this.
at the
side.
front
You
of
have
the,
a
that's at the
graph.
front. It's like an overview.
Good job. Was this right, 105?
A little bit.
It gets you to the ballpark. Get you to PPG fields.
I reprinted one.
Crispy fields.
Mine is like foundation.
Maybe.
Page before it has one of these.
Hey. I feel like I'm close.
It's right after stormwater management.
I was just there.
Couple pages after it.
Hey.
All right, we made it, all right.
Yay.
Sounds good. Okay, on the revenue side, there's multiple lines there. You can see where our revenue comes from multiple different sources. Things like what we call system development charges, or permits to connect into the system. And then also our main line has to do with user fees. And we are planning a 5% increase this year, for water and sewer. We're not keeping track. In fact, especially on the water side, more so than the sewer. With the additional water lines, our local funds we can't fund them just out of the sewer fund. I've had to go over into some of the reserve funds on the water plant construction fund and pull about $1 million out of there to help fund our portion of water lines. We've done a pretty good job of finding funds from OPWC, funding things, but it just isn't enough. And with the inflation we've experienced in recent years, it's had a big impact on us. If, when we get to the water plant, you'll see a few years ago, chemicals were less than 500,000. Now they're more than $1 million. And, big increases with things like our repair parts. Whenever we go to repair a pump, or the contracts we do with, to get services from contractors to help with repairs. All of that is really increased dramatically, and even the cost of replacing those water lines. So I know everybody experienced it in their home, in their own budget. We've seen it too. And of course, in the wages of our people, they've needed to increase. So we've seen it all around. So we've been trying to keep it down. We're still very competitive, with our neighbors. So, but unfortunately, they do need to go up.
When do you
Yes.
expect that 5% to hit?
Well,
Increase.
it'll show up in the bill that goes out in March, and then it will be due April 10th. And, so we'll get it for about 3/4 of the year, and that's the way we've been implementing them, following the budget in recent years when it's been necessary. But on those user fees, is there any question on any of those lines? Yes, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you. Is it somewhere else that, because I don't see anything for Norton. What's Norton paying us?
Well, that's rolled into the user fees.
Oh, I just saw Norton's. I
On
saw
sewer
the-
rates, Norton pays 1.5 times the Barberton rate.
I just saw the Norton surcharge and it was zeros there.
Well, it used to be, we would give money back to them. There was a 22.5% surcharge on sewer rates in Norton. They added 27.5 that they got back. But after we renegotiated that in 2017, and now we keep the whole 1.5 on the sewer rates.
Yep. Thank you.
There's quite a few lines here. Some of that comes from, reimbursements with grants and loans and things like that comes in as we go work through projects.
Can I ask a question about the
Yes,
next,
Mrs.
the
Beck.
next page? Can I ask a question about this page over here, the 52550 utility bill processing charges? Is that the company that sends out our water bill?
Okay, you're down in the operating budget?
Yeah.
Okay, what was that number again?
52550.
52, okay, I have to go to next page. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, those are those are what it costs us to process a bill.
Right.
If you notice on the sewer side, there's nothing there for 25.
So,
And there should be something there. As I went through the new software, I missed that one. And I actually wanted to discuss that one with, Mr. Flaker, and we've discussed it since. I discovered this earlier that this was missing. And, the sewer budget is, it's a little over $8 million. So the way we're going to approach it is, we can shift funds from other places. It isn't, on an $8 million budget, you can't hit it to the penny. So we hope to be able to just move funds and cover that.
So actually, my question was though about it. Remember when they didn't send us our bill, I think 2 times last year? This is the place that didn't send us our bills? Do you remember that?
Yeah, Jeremy there, he'll cover that one.
So as everyone has noticed, the past few months, your bill's gotten to you a lot sooner. We did away with that company.
Okay, that's my question, yeah.
So, like I said to you guys, when that happened, it was unacceptable. So I did research, I did go with another company. And as you guys can tell, the bills are getting processed very quickly now and hitting the mailboxes very quickly. So it's a company out of Stowe that we went with.
Out of where?
Stowe.
Still wanted to keep it local. A lot of places are getting away from it. That probably, unfortunately, our next steps will be contracting out to a big company. I think they're out of Indiana somewhere. So want to avoid that at all costs. So still want to try to stay as local as can be, providing business to local businesses, because our bill templates come from a local business as well. So
Gotcha.
But yeah, new company, completely different company, got away from that old company.
Gotcha. So is it more or less than $51,000, $52,000?
It will be coming in right around there. One thing with this new company, we're going to be saving on postage, on the postage side of things. So when we were doing bills, we were printing off the bills, sending them off. The company would pick them up, they fold them, insert them, mail them out. Well, the one step they really didn't do is like a pre-sort to help get a lower postage rate.
Got ya, okay.
So with this company, they're able to do that, and it saves us in postage. So instead of paying, I forget what it was, 63, 64 cents or whatever it was last year, it's down to like the 52, 53 cent range. So it helps lower the postage cost by about 10 cents per bill. So we'll save a little bit of money on the postage side of things.
Excellent, okay.
So.
Yeah, much of this administrative budget, the operating side of it, is managed by the finance department, because they take care of the bill processing and sending things out, and they take care of all of our purchase orders, that type of thing. So they manage our money.
Cool,
So.
excellent. Well, I guess I have another one. Training and travel, do you guys have plans on getting trained, like?
The 9,000, yes.
Yeah, tell me about that.
We've had some retirements that I really feel we need, especially in maintenance. We just lost a pretty experienced person. And we've anticipate losing another one in this upcoming years. So we need to take some of the younger guys and get them trained.
Gotcha.
Most of the training travel helps us with maintaining our licenses, but in this case, it's higher this upcoming year because there'll be some specialized training, pump repairs, electrical, that sort of thing, which that training's not cheap.
So we have that in 2 places, though. It's on that 9,000, and then you've got it over here, 3,500. Personal service, oh, wait, hold on. I saw it twice. Am I crazy?
Well, there's one training travel that's in the administration, but you have them in other budgets as well. You'll see it in the wastewater plant, you'll see it in water distribution, sewer collection, as well as the water plant, and water administration. But this one I bumped more than the others because of the need in maintenance.
I see now, thank you.
So what's this page then?
This one is the sewage administration total, and over here is personal.
I see where that's at now, okay.
You miss it when you're looking, so you
Yes,
forget.
they start to blend together.
Okay.
Yes. Ms.
Do you
Gerhart?
have Swisscom in your budget also, or was that just a typo?
I'm sorry.
You have Swisscom in your budget also?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, for utilities, we pay a portion of it as well, and, yeah. We have a lot of computers.
It was sneaking on to all the budgets last week, that's just why I asked.
Right.
Equipment and furnishings on the next page, 106, has gone up quite a bit to, well, no, actually, you always budgeted 300,000, last year you used 68, this year it's 300,000. So what are you buying?
Which line are you looking at?
53740.
Okay, in the,
Equipment and furnishing?
Capital outlay.
And 4322.
oh, okay, it's in the wastewater plant.
Yes.
How did I know that?
Okay. Okay, that has to do, actually, we have some pretty large equipment there. We've got, well over 100 pumps, but this specifically is going for blowers. We've got, we need to replace a blower. We've got it's a 4,000 CFM blower, which is big. I mean, and we need to replace one of those. It also, a part of this is going to go for the city portion of the screw pumps. We've got that OPWC, funding on it. We've got a loan. We also have, a grant that's part of that. But we need to cover the local portion too, so part of that's coming out of that line.
What does a blower do? Like
Well,
keep the pumps-
we have aeration tanks, and so you have a biomass in the wastewater treatment plant. So we have microorganisms that actually do the treatment. It's a biological system.
Yeah.
So you have to give them air. If you don't give them air, they go septic, it stinks.
Like an aerator.
So we take something that's on the septic side, we raise up the dissolved oxygen level,
Okay.
and then we get a favorable type of microorganisms and bacteria growing. And we can do in the treatment plant much quicker than what normally occurs in nature,
Okay, the biome.
It's like super interesting.
in a nutshell.
I love going down there and like
Oh,
learning
yeah.
about all that you guys do and.
Yeah, there's more to
No,
it.
I do, because I used to work in
this
thing, so.
It's one of my favorite places.
That was all my highlights.
Okay, we okay with those? Then, and that is followed by an industrial pretreatment budget that's small. There's two people that do that. They monitor our industry, they sample them, we make sure that they are in compliance. We regulate them just like the EPA regulates us, and we do that because the EPA requires us to do so. And that the two people are there, that's just part of their wages. They both work at the plant, so they're funded from the plant and that. But that's what that is. Then going from the sewer side over to water, and I don't think the page number would do any good, but it's 110, so it's basically 5 pages back from where the sewer side is.
I hate to do this to you, Mr. Weaver.
Sure, hey, go back.
Back to the sewage one, I was just.
Sure.
I was catching something here. The
Okay.
capital outlay at the top, 53,720, budget of 10,000 for this year. And then if you go down further, which it's, under your, I don't know. It's another capital outlay, 53,720, and it's budgeted 80,000.
Okay,
I mean,
okay. I got the 10,000, and that has to do with buildings.
right.
So there's going to be some improvements there that have to do with doors. We've got garage down there with a lot of overhead doors. They need some repairs, so
Right.
that's the plan for that one. The 80,000 one, are you talking about the 8,000 in capital outlay in industrial?
No, I'm
It's towards the bottom
He's
of the
all the way
page.
towards the
all the
bottom.
way to the bottom there, 53,720, it's all the same, line item, it looks like.
4324, Denny.
Okay, that's in collection. And Mr. Shreve will be covering that one, but the 80,000, I'm not exactly sure which one that is.
So I wanted to I wanted to point out real quick, okay, so you guys are all jumping around, so the last five are, like we talked the other day, are very similar. So
Right.
53,720 is capital, and that's in all of the budgets. If you look, there's little subcategories. Okay, so if we're going down through, so we're starting on page 105, and you go down through, and you see where, hold on, I lost it. Where it says expenses, and then right underneath of it, there's a 4321 sewage administration. So 4321 is the administrative budget. So if you flip to the next page, and then you look down through, you'll find a line that says 4322. That's the sewer treatment plant. So inside of the sewage fund, there's sub-budgets. So, and it's broken up into departments. So like capital outlay and some of them, like the buildings, if it's a treatment plant building, that budget's gonna be different than the distribution and collection. Distribution and collection has 36 garage doors down there. So when you talk about, building repairs, you have to budget money to make sure that the doors all open and close down there so they get the equipment in and out. So I mean, that is some of the increase in some of the equipment.
I understand that confusion, though. In the past, each one of these budgets was on a separate page. And so we just covered, administration. Next page would be the sewage plant. Then one page for industrial, then you do sewer collection. And it kind of runs together, so I actually highlighted those headings on my page because I was doing the same thing. I was writing down the page.
You want my book?
Yeah, we're all adjusting to a new program here.
What did you say we were gonna go to next?
Okay, over to water.
Water
And,
fund?
it'll say water fund.
Page 110, he said. I wrote it down.
There we go.
It's really long, it's a long one.
So this starts the same way that the sewer did. It starts off with all your revenues. It has your user fees. It has, the funds that we collect from the tap-in fees. There's some assessments that are in there. You can look down the lines and see all the different sources of revenue. Below that, as a source of revenue, there are things like note proceeds too, which notes you pay off every year, then you rebuy them. Usually when you rebuy them, you're buying for less than where you started. So if you had 100,000, maybe the next year it's 50, you keep reducing those. Then when you get close to the bottom of that front page, you'll see water administration. And that starts the budget that's pretty much mirrors the sewer administration. And it funds almost every person that the sewer administration does. There's all these wage splits because, like I'm paid from half water, half sewer. Mr. Shreve is paid from, like a third, water, a third sewer, another third over on the general fund, and it's the same for for HR, same for Jeremy, even for law. There's some in law because all of those places assist the operation of the utilities department. Yes, Mr. Griffin.
43,400, what's that FEMA reimbursement? Explain that to me. What, do we give them money back, or they give us
You see which one is?
43,400, the FEMA?
It was in 2021.
Oh, okay.
We have nothing the next several years. What,
Right, and, when we get money back from FEMA, it should show there. I'm not sure where that is,
It's towards.
where it went. We are getting some money back from FEMA for the design of the dam. And so that was about $1 million. That was 90%, we're paying 10. And so I file for those on a regular basis, and they come in and, but that's where typically it would go. It's probably going someplace on a different line. And I'm not sure where those are going, Jeremy.
So the dam, that is going in Fund 239. It's the FEMA fund. So we have a dedicated FEMA fund. It's Fund 239.
Okay, so we're not using this one?
No, that
Okay.
one, I would have to look back to 21 to see what we were getting reimbursed for FEMA for back in 21. So, yeah, nothing's budgeted for it this year.
Yeah, back in 21, it actually had to do with the dam also, but it had to do with some research that we was doing. And it helped us do some studies to decide what was the best fix for the dam. And actually, once that was determined, then we applied for funds to do the design and construction.
Jeremy, can you repeat that number again?
What, the FEMA
40,
one?
yeah, the 43, it's going to 2 something.
It's Fund 239. It's not in the water fund whatsoever.
Gotcha, yeah.
It's under a special revenue fund.
All through that, the water administration, as you get down through there, you'll recognize the same lines that you saw on the sewer side. Many of them are 50/50. Not all. I know they're tough to find. I've been doing the same thing. Yeah, I didn't do that good, did I? We're
ready.
This is a little long one.
We don't want to mess with the water.
True.
We might.
True story.
Make it better.
Let Monty keep looking.
Are there any other questions?
Won't say anything.
We have more to go on the water.
But, if you do see some others, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to dig into it. Okay. If I don't know, I'll find out. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to have Todd come up and finish water and sewer with the collection and distribution, which is their off of Snyder Avenue, just to wrap up all the utilities in there.
I was gonna say, and so Denny kind of touched on it. We'll just stay right here on this page, so we should be on 112. And if we look at the little number there on the hand side, so under 4613, where it says water distribution. So the top, again, personnel services, you'll see it's $1.3 million budget. We've got 23, 24 guys down there that maintain water lines, sewer lines, fire hydrants, all valving. So that's split between, most of their salaries are split between this line item and the collection line under salaries. The rest of that budget pretty much mirrors years in the past. The supplies, we budgeted a little bit more. We went a little over budget last year, so that would have just been an operation and maintenance adjustment. So we would have taken from one line item to add to another to cover our supplies. Those are our clamps for fixing water line breaks, brass parts, water meters, that kind of thing, that are involved in the distribution system. Motor maintenance continues to grow. We're hoping, by going with the enterprise lease that we can reduce those costs, but we still want to be able to maintain what we have in our fleet. And then looking down through, I don't believe, so if you flip over to page 113, we are going to be purchasing some capital. Underneath vehicles, if I remember correct, we've been in discussion a lot with what it is it's essentially a small vac truck. We are EPA mandated to identify the water service material on both sides of the curb box. So essentially we have to know what is on the homeowner side and what is on the city side. We have to report that to EPA. One of the ways of doing that is to vac up curb boxes and physically look at each side. It's important. We want to know the surveys that we've put out online, that we want to get the picture of the meter. That helps us identify what comes through the wall, but we don't know. That doesn't tell us what's on the street side of the curb box. So one of the ways that we can, if people aren't turning in surveys inside the home, we can vac up curb boxes and identify materials that way. So that 100,000 would go towards that. It would be a split piece of equipment between both departments. So I believe there's 80,000 in the collection. Our jet truck that we just purchased, the Gat Vac, was 460,000. So we're looking at a machine that's half that size, just to do curb boxes. So we can flip back to the collection. Well, I guess, does anybody have any questions about distribution, water distribution? We'll go back to collection. So we'll go back, was it 10 pages, Denny?
Yes.
Back to the sewage fund. And it'll be the last 2 pages of the sewage fund. We'll have the collection. So the bottom half of page 107, which is the page before the pie graph in the sewage fund. So again, personnel services, there's obviously less salaries that are taken out of the sewage fund. The majority of those guys are paid out of the water because it was 1.3. This is 547 with the personnel services tied to that and all the roll-up costs below. Our professional services, in the past we budgeted 135. We went ahead and reduced that. So that perfect scenario right now, we actually have a sewer line that we have to do an emergency repair on. And so that professional services can help design in a pinch. It can also help us design, our water line, sewer line projects that we're applying OPWC funding for. All of the rest of them down through pretty much mimic the years before. And then we get to the building improvements. So those, again, like I said, all the garage doors, roof repairs down there. I believe, I'm not sure if Matt has added garage door openers, but one of the things that we were trying to do was add openers to, the new building was built, there was only a couple of doors that had openers put on them. We're trying to put openers on all the doors so the guys don't have to physically lift and pull down the doors. And then the equipment and furnishings, again, that sewer, that jet truck. No, the jet truck's gonna come out of vehicles, equipment and furnishings. I would have to look back at my notes to see what 102. Do you remember when we sat down with Matt? What do you have for equipment? Because we just bought a valve machine. So I'd have to look back through my notes.
Then right under it's 100, or 370, I mean.
Any other questions there?
You said that back truck's coming out of that 370?
I believe it's out of that 370. And then there's a line item there for infrastructure, which would include, installation of new sewer lines. Anything else? All right, that completes those two funds.
Next, I would like to have Ms. Stacy Carr come up and talk about the planning department, which is middle of the book, just before special revenue funds.
I numbered my pages, so it's 45, if you count the first page as one.
46.
Okay, I emailed you guys all last week. The only one that was different from me as far as the name of the account was under personal service, operations and maintenance. There's a 52430, it says repair and maintenance. That's actually the Arts and Entertainment District budget.
Which one is it, Stacy?
52430.
52430.
We
Okay.
budgeted for 175 for that. Training and travel, we have 10,000 there. It is up a little bit from last year, but as you know, we lost our assistant director. We're getting a new strategic planner and hopefully a CDBG administrator. So with that, there's going to be coming a lot of trainings and travels that are going to be happening. They'll include Ohio Conference, community development, webinars and seminars and stuff. A lot of stuff with Heritage Ohio that goes along with Main Street, Main Street, Barberton. We have the demolition at 210. We actually closed on our bidding for the demolition project on Thursday. And Mr. Heidick brought up a good question. Do we have enough in that line item to cover the demos that we have with the new costs? And the answer was no. At 210, including the general fund at 210 and CDBG at 49 having left from 24 and 23 funds, I'd have a total of 259. And the total needed with the new contract price is going to be 283, but that does not include what it would cost to remove asbestos if any property contained it. So just on the demolition side, it would be short around $24,000. Doesn't mean that we couldn't get possibly grants from somewhere through ODOD. I know that they have another round that is happening. That's through Ohio Department of Development. We were lucky enough last year to receive grant dollars to reimburse for like nine or 10 properties that we had demolished in the past years. So that was a big help. Other than that, if you guys have specific questions, I mean, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. But you have questions about what we spend the funds on in a line item?
Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Just the 30,000 in the, that's budgeted under the buildings other improvements, 53,720.
Yeah, so right now our offices are kind of wonky in the planning department. So with hiring, hopefully the CDBG administrator that we're out for bid for, he's strategic planner, and then eventually filling Fulton's position as the strategic, or the planning director, assistant director. There's gonna be some office spaces that are gonna need to move, so I don't really know what that looks like. We budgeted last year to kind of like rearrange some stuff, it didn't happen, so hopefully this year we can get an extra space upstairs, so, building an extra wall, getting an extra office up there.
Little cubicle walls, 30,000.
What did you end up doing last year, Stacy, with the 25,000?
Jeremy, do you remember, Jeremy, if we had to move those funds from something? From the building to other improvements? 'Cause I don't remember what it was spent on.
I need to look it up.
Since we're there, infrastructure, 150,000 we spent, 26,000 last year. Would
So I don't know what the plan was when Pete was here, but it's able to be used for sidewalks. I know we have some projects that were hopefully taking place on Block 7, so that could be used for improvements on Block 7, the parking lot, and then also infrastructure, maybe do some Phase 2 lighting on 2nd Street. I just stuck with the budget that was proposed from last year to continue projects.
Block 7, are you talking about the purple lot? The lake?
Yes. Yes, the lake.
Can we make it not a lake with that? Instead of sidewalks, I mean.
Yeah, so Mr. Shreve had gone out for an RFQ to get proposals back from companies to see what it could look like, and we have some really cool ideas. If we're gonna be able to do all those, I don't know. We obviously have to have the budget in place first, but yes, repaving it and put in new parking spaces there, because I know it's kind of wonky to get through and park and
But
maneuver.
nobody knows where to park either. It's a pet peeve of mine.
Yes.
Just while Emily brought that up for the Block 7, can Mr. Shriver, you provide that history of what's kind of the big project of that parking lot?
Yeah, we can share the RFQs with you.
Okay, because it's more than like a repaving, correct?
It would be.
Yeah.
Kind of like focus on hopefully making it like a connector between 2nd and West Tusk.
Is yours thing.
Here's my mic. Yeah. I'm not a visual person, okay. Can you remind us of professional services for planning?
Yeah, so we assist with the payment of Insight and Retzel out of those line items. And then obviously if there's anything that planning needs as far as reports done or legal things written up, we can tap out of that. It's so high last year, I believe, because we had to transfer money into that line item when we gave some CDBG funds back out of that general fund portion of it. But then we obviously got those CDBG dollars back in different capacities, so.
Okay. Do you know what Insight and Retzel are, like individually?
Mayor, if you.
50,000, please.
Thank you.
It's not to exceed 50,000, right? It would be less.
So it's like an up to. If we wanted to ask some questions about that Insight report, would that be you or the mayor?
We can tag team it.
Okay.
I could have a representative from Insight come in and talk as well.
Would you rather do that since it's already late in the evening?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. I'll save my questions then.
Well, if you want to send those questions over throughout the week, we can have those prepared and answered for next week.
Okay. Insight will be here next week? Okay.
Well, I'll have to make sure that they can attend next week, but
Okay.
Yes.
One other quick question, the land bank program expenditure is 52,705?
Yes.
Can you explain this?
Yeah, so we keep money in that account when we sell properties, because what the process is right now, if it's a side lot program, we get a surveyor, we split those, and we join those to the other parcels. So we pay for that lot split first, and then we reimburse, or we get it refunded when we close on the properties. So that money right there pays for those types of surveys, or if there's any type of transfer fees that have to happen.
So then the reimbursement would show up as revenue then?
It would. And then you'll see something to land reutilization acquisition for $2,000. That's for any properties that we foreclosed on through Summit County Land Bank or Summit County, because there is a fee associated with the transfer of those properties to the city of Barberton's name. It's usually minimal, $35 maybe to transfer a property, but if it's through the land bank, then I think that fee is $400.
Sorry.
Any other questions?
It's not completely budget related, but while you're up here, I just wanted to say I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I think it'd be hard to take that over, and now you've lost Mr. Fulton, and
But I'm excited I get to build my team, so that's the important part, and I'm
that
really
is the
excited about
important
that.
part, but I'm just encouraging you that I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anything else budget related? Okay,
Nope.
thank you.
I know we've got a few weeks before final passage of the, or vote of the budget, so I'd like to have one more, if you're okay with that, have fire tonight. If not, we can hold off. I know there's a whole rest of the meeting.
Is it quick?
It's cheap, Iona, come on.
How quick can you do it?
Now we gotta find fire.
I mean, he's short, he's a short timer. We can.
This is how Monty raises the most money on the dump tank, right here.
Mine starts, I think it's page 39. It's pretty much, most of it's on the page here, if you look. The first 12 or so line items there all have to do with the payroll, the insurance, the salaries, the different types of pension systems, insurance. So all that's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of it comes from, the finance department helps me determine how much we're going to have to pay out and all that. The clothing allowance did go up. They have $200 a piece for each individual. So that's where that extra $9,000 comes from for that. Now, under the operating, some of these were split, but usually they were combined in the past. You'll see under the training and travel, I asked for $25,000. And the reason last year we didn't use the $14,000 because $12,500 is geared towards college education. I had nobody that turned in any tuition reimbursements, so that money wasn't utilized. Professional service has to do with our EMS billing. Pretty much that's a bulk of that. The contracts on 52-420 and the service agreements at 52-215 there, those handle, again, that was split, has to do with anything to do checking our air monitors, EMS monitors, power cots, the grab system for the ambulances, Lexipol, which is our rules and regulations, which is all digital, the Elatec, which is our scheduling component, the bricks handles all of our alarm systems. The alarms come in digitally. Not only do we get them over the radio, by the time they come over the radio, we've already got the alarm and are on the way, pretty much. Our ESO is our management for our runs for EMS, fire, and any type of inspections. It's all, again, everything is digital, everything is paperless. And then Sundance, at times we have to have, for these to integrate into our run reports and that, the times and that, has to go through Sundance. So a lot of times we'll have to have different scripts written, so it shows up on the runs. You'll see under the radio contracts, there's two different ones. The way it was set up is when we get the bill for the radio contract, it comes to fire, we pay it out initially, and then we're reimbursed by the other departments. So it usually ends up being around $32,000, $34,000, but our share is a lot less. And so we take care of all the radios, and we have to count for them. So I have to make sure that, Parks is paying their fair amount, police, and everything. The phone system, you'll see that's a lot on the phones. Keep in mind that handles not only the phones and the cell phones we use on ambulances and fire trucks, but all of our iPad systems. They're all cellular. Again, we write no reports anymore. Everything is on the iPads. Going down to things like the auto insurance, property insurance, liability, that's all determined by finance. They determine and they negotiate the prices for that. Small equipments and furnishing, that's pretty self-explanatory. You need anything like new chainsaw blades. Fans, we have new electric fans that we use for ventilation. So all of that falls under these small equipment and furnishings. Turnout gear. Turnout gear is probably one of our biggest upgrades and expenses, just because usually your helmets, gloves, hoods, boots, you keep them longer than you do your turnout gear. But when we buy gear, when Lieutenant Buren gets somebody's size, because everybody's tailored for their gear, and they get the coat and the pants. Now, the boots are interchangeable, the helmet's interchangeable. So, but it's usually $4,000 to $5,000 for a set of gear. And their life is usually 10 years anymore for that. Things like membership for the fire inspectors, chief's memberships, fire investigation. We try to keep our licensing pretty current, so we are able to, do citations, actually make, fire investigations, and make a case for a court. Operating supplies, that would be for anything that, we would have to have just for our day-to-day operations. Now, I do want to say with the safety supplies, there was two different ones. Safety supplies, and it was hooked up with building maintenance, which I think was 52,617. With those two, keep in mind that our main station's over 50 years old. We've had to pour a lot of money into things like just the simple things, the doors, dishwashers. We now have to upgrade a little bit more with the plumbing. And surprisingly enough, our new station is 16 years old. So I'm having to revisit a lot with the heating and cooling systems there. Last year we had to spend close to $14,000 for the hot water system there. So it's starting to catch up with a lot of this building maintenance. Finally, under the capital, we don't have a lot of capital to play with until 2028. For the Station 2 contract when it was built, and the repairs to Station 1, was just $195,000 a year is what we pay for that, out of $295 is what the taxes bring in. The new pumper truck was approximately $67,000, so it leaves me about $33,000 in capital. So at times, we have to keep some of that in reserve for if we get grants. We got grants for those extrication tools, and I think that was $38,000, and we had to have almost $4,000 for that, so. I know that was quick. Anything with East Ohio gas, power, gas and oil, we play it by ear pretty much. I mean, we try to get a basic amount of what was spent the last few years, but it's hard to say what you're going to spend. I mean, this year we're spending a lot more with the gas and electric due to the colder temperatures that we've had, so. All right. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
My eyes are blurry.
Your eyes are blurry.
I just want to say thank you to all of our department heads for being here and answering questions and, you know, just being available if anything comes up, you know, we know that we can reach out to you. I know it makes for a long Monday evening, but it's definitely necessary, so we appreciate you. Okay, so the final thing I've got here in my committee meeting that's still rolling, continued from last week, we are still discussing the appointments for Charter Review Commission. I'm going to go ahead and just open this up for discussion. I feel like I said my piece last week, as well as I did email the mayor, which I'm sure you all saw the response to that, so go ahead and open it up to you guys. Mr. Harris.
Sure. I guess this would be directed to the mayor. Obviously, based on conversations and everything, yeah, you have four Democrats listed on there, and you saw my email. I don't care about that. Some do, some don't. I guess, you know, I sent you an email saying Mr. Persley, Mr. Matko. I mean, what's wrong with that list?
I mean,
Other than you don't think anybody agrees with it?
well, I mean, I talked to a number of, first, I appreciate the people who have talked publicly, right? I appreciate that. I appreciate people who may not feel comfortable talking, who maybe questions came up or comments came up afterwards. I've talked to a number of council members, and it was clear with some of the discussion that not everyone's going to be happy no matter who's selected, right? I'm glad that you've reached out to people and had more people apply. I mean, the slate is what it is. I've talked to people and they said, well, one council person wants this one removed and they'll vote for it. But if you replace that person with this person, then I'm going to vote no against it. Like, no one's going to be happy with this. It's clear. So there is a deadline that was put in 4 years ago through the Charter Review Commission. And so that is the end of this week. And all the members that have applied meet the requirements of the charter. That includes the 7 that have come in front of City Council.
Okay, are there any other remarks? Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. Regardless of who's on this commission, regardless if we like or don't like these people, these suggestions that they come up with, there's certain cities that have different ways of doing this. I believe Stowe, their Charter Review Commission, bypasses council and sends their recommendations straight to the ballot. I've come to terms with not being okay with some of these people and being okay with others, because at the end of the day, all they can do is send us suggestions. And we can pile suggestions on top of their suggestions. We could send 15 charter amendments to the people if we wanted to. We don't need this commission to do it. Years ago, before the commission met, I brought out to move the primary out of September, which saved us at that time $60,000 into May. Also wanted the choice on the ballot of eliminating the primaries. I wanted the people to have a choice. Do you want to keep them, or do you just want to scrap them and say to hell with all party BS? The council at that time rejected, saying, oh, it would confuse voters, when we all know they just wanted to be the partisan thing and protect that letter, and we moved it to May. That was before the Charter Commission met. So my point is, we have the authority, not them. So, yeah, I'm not happy seeing some of these names. But if the chair allows, I'll motion them up, because they hold no power. They can send us every suggestion they want, and we could stomp on it, or we could send it to the people. I prefer sending 15 charter amendments to the people if we feel like it. Let the people decide how they want to vote. Let the people decide how they want their government run. President Greer, in our time here, have we ever voted no to any charter amendment, whether we agreed it or not, to send to the voters? Thank you. With that said, I'll leave it to the chair, because we can argue the names, we can argue the qualifications. I won't hear any more arguments over parties, because who the hell cares? This is a town of 25,000 people. It's 8.5 square miles. If we're drawing partisan lines in this city over something that can just send a piece of paper and say, here's our suggestion, we can look at them and go like this right in their face, then we seriously have more problems than I thought. Thank you.
Any other remarks? Mr. Harris?
I just have a question, since I'm new to council, and I don't recall any charter amendments ever being brought out by the commission or passed through council. Can anybody tell me about that? I mean, has there been?
Has there been?
Yeah, has the commission recommended charter amendments that have been passed through council and went to the people?
Yes.
How long ago?
5 years ago.
5 years ago?
Yeah,
And there's-
engineering issues and some other, whether that be a surveyor qualified and some other stuff out there. There was also quite a few that were turned down.
There were some that I remember rejected by council. One of them was the 2 different directors would be appointed positions instead of hired positions. I don't think those made
That's
it.
reverse, I
And
believe.
reverse.
What's that?
Two appointed for planning.
Planning and parks.
Well, they were hired, but the amendments,
No,
they were
didn't
hired,
want to put it underneath the mayor.
right, which would make them appointed positions and not hired
The other
positions.
2 that were turned down was a nonpartisan ballot
Hmm.
and elimination of 2 council seats due to the size of population.
And there was also.
Those never made it out of council to the ballots.
And there was also, I think, what went to the people, you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong, but since we don't have a health department anymore, was trying to eliminate that from the charter.
I believe that's true.
I can't remember if that reached the ballot or not.
The one with the parks and planning, council size, and partisan has been offered 10 years ago also.
Mm.
Never made it out of council, which in my mind, that's the people's to vote, not the council to decide whether they lose a job or whether they don't like partisan. The people ought to decide that. That's my input.
That's a citizen in the gallery saying that, just putting it out there.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anything from the gallery? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Being that it's 8:14 and I need a break, I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick miscellaneous. Mr. Heidig, do you have something?
Apparently a big bladder.
You're raising your hand.
Procedural.
We
We have to suspend, not called for a
Oh,
committee of the
during
whole.
this.
Not called for a committee of the whole and not on tonight's agenda.
Right. And that would be 702, what's?
And 307.
702 to 304, I think.
I don't remember which way.
It's not on here.
304 is council agenda. That's not on the agenda. Right.
But
we have to not call for the committee of the whole first.
And then not call for it at the committee of the whole.
I apologize, I thought this happened
Would be-
during the legislative meeting.
Yeah.
Not during my committee.
Not on agenda.
No, no, we gotta go all.
Yep,
That's fine.
which is okay.
Did we just do this last week? Did we just do this last week?
Correct.
Oh, that's something else.
The 401 committee reports, not called for. Yep.
Recently.
Vote for the 702, your first is to suspend rules.
The committee report,
You want to do that first?
not called for at the committee of the whole, first.
Okay, so that would,
702.
That's one I just shared, 401.
okay, 401, not called for in 401. Committee of the whole. And then invoke rule 7 or whatever to suspend rule 304 the council agenda.
Sorry, so 304?
304 the council agenda.
Not called for,
Not called for.
or, I'm sorry, not on the agenda.
Yeah.
And the other one that's not called for is the committee of the whole.
There you go. Then- Okay.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please, to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Rule 401 not called for at the Committee of the Whole?
So moved.
Excuse me. A second.
A second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, I'm doing a makeshift thing here. I also need a motion to call, or invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Rule 304 not on the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, in a
I'll
second.
second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Is there any miscellaneous discussion for finance and personnel? Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
We're adjourned at 8:18.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. That concludes our individual committee meetings. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 8:30 and start our regular legislative.
This
Clean
is
your
the only
desk.
thing you're allowed to have. Oh, what is this? 14 aisles. Clean your desk up.
All right.
I clean you up. We've cleared out the gallery at this point.
I know, it's like everybody.
I mean, if you're still coming during budget talks, you are dedicated.
Actually, if I would have found that, I would have been like,
We're just waiting for a live stream.
It's on.
Is it? It's not showing on our side. Or is it frozen? You said it's working? All right, I was gonna say, don't touch anything. We're up, we're good to go.
Don't hop my.
All right. Today's Monday, February 24th, 2025. This is a regular legislative meeting of Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 8:34 PM. Please stand for a pledge of allegiance, followed by invocation by Master.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, continue to watch over our country, watch over our state, watch over our city, our first responders, our teachers, everybody that's involved in leading our community. Always remember 22. And with that, amen. All right, clerk, please call the roll. Yeah, I got 4 stacks of paper here.
President Greer.
Present.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mrs. Thompson.
Here.
Mrs. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Easterling.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mrs. Beck.
Here.
Ms. Gerhart.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here. Approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the special legislative meeting held on Monday, February 10th, 2025, as presented. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the minutes of the legislative meeting from Monday, February 10th, 2025.
Thank you. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to approve the minutes of the special legislative meeting held on Monday, February 10th, 2025, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the minutes are adopted. Is there a motion to accept the finance report for the month of January 2025 as presented? Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the acceptance of the finance report for the month of January 2025 as presented.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Heidick to accept the Finance Department report for the month of January 2025 as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Finance report is adopted. Petitions and claims.
We have none.
Matters requested.
They've all been dispersed.
Thank you. Citizens addressing council. There were no more up there. However, I will just state that there was one that's turned in. She may have left, but I'll still call it out. Mrs. Miller?
She left.
Just doing my due diligence. All right. There's nobody else addressing council, so we'll move into first reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 22-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, 2025 Operating and Capital Budget. An ordinance adopting the budget for various funds of the City of Barberton for the period beginning January 1st, 2025, and providing for the administration thereof and declaring an emergency. This is the first reading. There will be 3 readings. Ordinance number 23-2025, presented by Mr. Easterling. Title, enter into contract demolition of 107 5th Street. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into contract with a contractor for the demolition of the city-owned building at 107 5th Street and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend, Mr. Easterly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Ms. Gerhart?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Easterling's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Easterling and seconded by Ms. Gerhart to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mr. Easterling.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance 23-2025.
Thank you. And Ms. Gerhart?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mr. Easterling's motion on adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Easterling and seconded by Ms. Gerhart to adopt ordinance number 23-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 24-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Note Ordinance, Meter Reading System Replacement Project. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $225,000 of the notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring and installing advanced radio metering system equipment to be used in connection with the municipal sewer and water systems, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Fiscal Officer's Certificate. To the Council of the City of Barberton, Ohio. As Fiscal Officer of the City of Barberton, Ohio, I certify in connection with your proposed issue of not to exceed $225,000 of notes, the notes, to be issued in anticipation of the issuance of bonds, for the purpose of paying cost of acquiring and installing advanced radio metering system equipment to be used in connection with the municipal sewer and water systems, together with all the necessary appurtenances thereto, the improvement. 1. The estimated life or period of usefulness of the improvement is at least 5 years. 2. The estimated maximum maturity of the bonds, calculated in accordance with section 133.20 of the revised code, is 10 years, being my estimate of the life or period of usefulness of the improvement. If notes in anticipation of the bonds are outstanding later than the last day of December of the 5th year following the year of issuance of the original issue of notes, the period in excess of those 5 years shall be deducted from that maximum maturity of the bonds. Therefore, the maximum maturity of the bonds is 6 years. 3. The maximum maturity of the notes is April 20th, 2032, which is 15 years from April 20th, 2017, the date of issuance of the original notes issued for this purpose. Signed, Jeremy Flaker, Director of Finance, City of Barberton, dated February 7th, 2025.
All right, motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 24-2025.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 24-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number,
25.
25, I'm good, okay. Ordinance number 25-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, note ordinance, trickling filter system at wastewater treatment plant. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $25,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of reconstructing and improving the trickling filter system at the municipal wastewater treatment plant, together with all appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Fiscal Officer's Certificate. To the Council of the City of Barberton. As Fiscal Officer of the City of Barberton, Ohio, I certify in connection with your proposed issue of not to exceed $25,000 of notes, the notes, to be issued in anticipation of the issuance of bonds, the bonds, for the purpose of paying costs of reconstructing and improving the trickling water filter system at the municipal wastewater treatment plant, together with all appurtenances thereto, the improvement. 1. The estimated life or period of usefulness of the improvement is at least 5 years. 2. The estimated maximum maturity of the bonds calculated in accordance with section 133.20 of the revised code is 40 years, being my estimate of the life or period of the usefulness of the improvement. If notes in anticipation of the bonds are outstanding later than the last day of December of the 5th year following the year of issuance of the original issue of notes, the period in excess of those 5 years shall be deducted from the maximum maturity of the bonds. Therefore, the maximum maturity of the bonds is 39 years. The maximum maturity of the notes is April 15, 2040, which is 20 years from April 15, 2020, the date of issuance of the original notes issued for this purpose. Signed, Jeremy Flaker, Director of Finance, City of Barberton, Ohio, dated February 7, 2025.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rules required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 25-2025.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 25-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension, or adoption, sorry.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 26-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, note ordinance, street improvement project. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $1,600,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of improving streets and roads in the city by resurfacing, reconstructing, paving, and marketing of making other improvements, together with all necessary related improvements and appurtenances thereto, as designated in the plans approved or to be approved by council, and declaring an emergency. Fiscal Officer's Certificate. To the Council of the City of Barberton, Ohio. As Fiscal Officer of the City of Barberton, Ohio, I certify in connection with your proposed issue of not to exceed $1,600,000 of notes, the notes, to be issued in anticipation of the issuance of bonds, the bonds, for the purpose of paying costs of improving streets and roads in the city by resurfacing, reconstructing, paving, and making other improvements, together with all necessary related improvements and appurtenances thereto, and as designated in the plans approved or to be approved by council. The improvement. 1. The estimated life or period of usefulness of the bond is at least 5 years. 2. The estimated maximum security of the bonds calculated in accordance with section 133.20 of the revised code is 15 years. If notes in anticipation of the bonds are outstanding later than the last day of December of the 5th year following the year of issuance of the original issue of notes, the period in excess of those 5 years shall be deducted from the maximum maturity of the bonds. The maximum maturity of the notes is April 13th, 2042, which is 20 years from April 13th, 2022, the date of issuance of the original notes issued for this purpose. Signed, Jeremy Flaker, Director of Finance, City of Barberton, Ohio, dated February 7th, 2025.
Thank you. Motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rules required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 26-2025.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 26-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Halfway.
Ordinance number 27-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson, titled Note Ordinance, Water Main Replacement Project. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $1,300,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to provide funds to pay for the cost of making improvements to the water system, including replacing water mains together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Fiscal Officer's Certificate. To the Council of the City of Barberton, Ohio. As Fiscal Officer of the City of Barberton, Ohio, I certify in connection with your proposed issuance of not to exceed $1,300,000 of notes, the notes, to be issued in anticipation of the issuance of bonds, the bonds, to provide funds to pay costs of making improvements to the water system, including replacing water mains together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, the improvement. 1. The estimated life or period of usefulness of the improvement is at least 5 years. 2. The estimated maximum maturity of the bonds calculated in accordance with Section 133.20 of the revised code is 40 years. If notes in anticipation of the bonds are outstanding later than the last day of December of the 5th year following the year of the issuance of the original issue of notes, the period in excess of those 5 years shall be deducted from the maximum maturity of the bonds. 3. The maximum maturity of the notes is 240 months from their date of issue. Signed, Jeremy Flaker, Director of Finance, City of Barberton, Ohio, dated February 7th, 2025.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 27-2025.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion is made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 27-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Heide?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
28-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Note Ordinance, Stormwater Management System Project. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $325,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of improving the city's stormwater management system by constructing and improving stormwater drainage facilities, including but not limited to the storm sewers, ditches, backflow prevention devices, wetland construction, catch basins, and other facilities for the retention and control of waters together with all the necessary ordinances thereto, and acquiring any real estate or interests in real estate necessary therefore, as designated in the plans approved or to be approved by council, and declaring an emergency. Fiscal Officer's Certificate. To the Council of the City of Barberton. As Fiscal Officer of the City of Barberton, I certify in connection with your proposed issue of not to exceed $325,000 of notes, the notes, to be issued in anticipation the issuance of bonds, the bonds, for the purpose of paying costs of improving the city's facilities, including but not limited to storm sewers, ditches, backflow prevention devices, wetland constructions, catch basins, and other facilities for the retention and control of waters, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and acquiring any real estate or interest in real estate necessary therefore, as designated in the plans approved or to be approved by the council. The improvement. 1. The estimated life or period of usefulness of the improvement is at least 5 years. 2. The estimated maximum maturity of the bonds calculated in accordance with section 133.20 of the revised code is 40 years. If notes in anticipation of the bonds are outstanding later than the last day of December of the 5th year following the year of issuance of the original issue of notes, the period in excess of those 5 years shall be deducted from the maximum maturity of the bonds. 3. The maximum maturity of the notes is April 12, 2043, which is 20 years from April 12, 2023, the date of issuance of the original notes used for this purpose. Signed, Jeremy Flaker, Director of Finance, City of Barberton, Ohio, dated February 7, 2025.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heide?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 28-2025.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 28-2025. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heide?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 29-2025, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Note Ordinance, Front Loader Acquisition Project. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $115,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring a front loader for use in carrying out functions of the road and storm sewer departments and declaring an emergency. Fiscal Officer's Certificate. To the Council of the City of Barberton, Ohio. As Fiscal Officer of the City of Barberton, Ohio, I certify in connection with your proposed issue of not to exceed $115,000 of notes, the notes, to be issued in anticipation of the issuance of bonds, the bonds, for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring a front loader for the use in carrying out functions of the road and storm sewer departments. The improvement. 1. The estimated life or period of usefulness of the improvement is at least 5 years. 2. The estimated maximum maturity of the bonds calculated in accordance with section 133.20 of the revised code is 10 years. If notes in anticipation of the bonds are outstanding later than the last day of December of the 5th year following the year of issuance of the original issuance of notes, the period in excess of those 5 years shall be deducted from the maximum maturity of the bonds. 3, the maximum maturity of the note is April 12, 2038, which is 15 years from April 12, 2023, the date of issuance of the original notes issued for this purpose. Signed, Jeremy Flaker, Director of Finance, City of Barberton, Ohio, dated February 7th, 2025.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, and Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and second by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 29-2025.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and second by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 29-2025. Are there any remarks? Thank you for reading that, Lori.
Once again,
Clerk, can you call the roll for adoption?
Mr. Easterling?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
This ends the first reading.
Second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
We have none.
Third reading of ordinances and resolutions.
We have none.
Appointments.
Tonight in the Finance Committee, they voted to suspend Rule 702, to invoke Rule 702 to suspend Rule 304, the not on the agenda rule, and the 401, not presented at the Committee of the Whole rule. We have a letter from Mayor Judge requesting the appointment of the following names to the Charter Review Commission: Thomas Harnden, Holly Johnson Perry, Nina Angeloff, Eddie Lawson, Carol Fry, Larry Charlie Reese, and Dallas Moore.
All right. Is there a motion to appoint these individuals? Mrs. Thompson? Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the appointment.
All right. Mr. Griffin, you're on finance, correct?
Yes, I'll second the motion. Appointment.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mr. Griffin. This is being all in favor, but seeing that there's one opposed, we'll just take a roll call on this.
All right.
Requires 5 to pass.
Mrs. Thompson?
No.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
No.
Mr. Easterling?
No.
Ms. Gerhart?
No.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
No.
3.
All right, motion fails. We'll have a special legislative meeting. No. I will call it at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
We can't,
In the morning?
and at
It has to
night.
be 24 hour notice.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I have 24 hours to
Look,
get
all
this
right,
posted.
forgot.
for the first meeting, I'll allow it Wednesday, 6 o'clock PM, special legislative meeting with finance. We'll have your finance committee meeting. And afterwards, we'll have, it'll be a special legislative for that. That day gives time to communicate with the mayor's office. If there's nothing on that day, then whenever that meeting ends, we'll call another special at whatever time we end that meeting, plus an hour, because I need time to call for it. And we'll just keep on going until the end of the month. Right? So, that's what it is.
10 o'clock tomorrow night.
No, 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 no,
it's
no.
not Wednesday at 6, no.
But I'm going to allow some time to start the communication before we have another special. All right. Is there?
Let me ask you, it's not an executive session, so anybody can come to that, right?
Yeah, it's an open.
Okay, cool.
All righty. Communication, or miscellaneous and unfinished business. Is there anything from department heads? They're still here. Anything from the body? Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. 6 years ago, President Greer and myself and some other people set up to show that regular people could take back their government and not just have hand-picked things by parties and by behind-the-scenes things. We both despise partisanship, and it's leaking back into this city from the opposite end. Took 40 years, but we showed that partisanship is not something that a 25,000 population, 8.5 square mile city needs, nor wants. Twice, we've tried to end partisanship through charter amendments. Both times, shot down by this council to let the people show, and I believe overwhelmingly that they would reject it too. We fought our asses off 6 years ago, and I don't want to see it creep back in like it is. Unfortunately, that was 6 years ago. You fast forward to today, I don't have that fight in me to do it all again from the opposite side. At 3 o'clock today, I went to the Board of Elections and officially withdrew. I'm not going to sit here and be a part of a partisan machine when I know that off of this council, I can be a better help to stop it from infiltrating the city of Barberton like it did once before. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Haddock. Are there any other remarks from the body? Anything? All right, just once more, we'll do Wednesday, 6 p.m., council chambers, special meeting, legislative meeting with the agenda being finance committee, discussion on the appointees, and a vote at the end, maybe, if it comes out, right? So, and then from that, other than that, I don't have anything else.
I'm not making a speech.
Communication from,
Is it too late?
it is, but I'll let it happen. What's up?
Thank you. Nobody's here for me to say this, thank you to, but the engagement fair was great on Sunday. It looked like a great turnout. I got to meet some new people. I might have joined another Key Club bar. So it was a great time out. So just wanted to say thank you to everybody that put that together and held it. That's all. Thank you.
It's good. It's good. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Kind of circling back, when it comes to the budget or any other of these projects that we've been discussing, if you have questions, please let us know throughout the week, and we'll get those answers. We're very, very busy. There's a ton going on, and especially now with the new administration at the federal level, there's always webinars or different things going on, pontificating on what the administration's going to do for grant programs or loan programs or infrastructure. If you see things in the news, there's all kinds of things that come in that we want to make sure that we're a part of, that we know about. So please, if questions come up with projects or budget, please let us know as soon as possible. A former city employee, Mr. Ron Speck, recently passed away. So please keep him and his family in your prayers. He was an AFSCME employee in the street department and the water treatment plant. Previously worked for the Barberton Herald before that. I do want to thank Mr. Josh Gordon for coming in and presenting to council. There's several economic community development type organizations here in the city, each with its own role, kind of creating that foundation or that opportunity for reinvestment, redevelopment, and development throughout the city. So glad to have them a part of the community here. In the coming weeks and months, there's going to be some legislation coming to council regarding Trushin Farm. So that's moving forward. One of them, there's an amendment to the development agreement. So per the language in a previously adopted development agreement by City Council, the developer, it said, and again, this was approved by City Council, that the developer may opt to monetize the TIF and CRA exemptions through the use of minimum service payments and special assessments. That kind of flows into the declaration of covenants. This will be recorded with the county and will place an obligation on the property for the owners to pay the minimum service payments that will be used to repay the bonds of the housing that's going there. So these are all legal things that have to pass through City Council, even though it's already been approved by council through the development agreement. And then lastly, there's a cooperative agreement. This is an agreement between the city, the Development Finance Authority, or agency, and developer, where the DFA agrees to issue the bonds and the developer agrees to repay the bonds and to place the minimum service payments on the property. The city has no financial obligation with any of this. It's just legally we have to, City Council has to once again approve these pieces of legislation. So we will have people here to talk more in depth and to get you some information on this so you guys can have a background on it and to ask any questions that you may have. So wanted to let you know that it's coming though. Do want to thank everyone who attended the Change for Change event this past Friday. Over $200 raised for Barberton Youth Wrestling. Kind of with that, you know, growing up in Barberton, there's always basketball and football primarily, right? Wrestling has really come about in a major way. So I want a big shout out to all the Barberton High wrestlers who participated this past weekend. I believe it was in districts in Wadsworth. I believe there's 5 that advanced from Wadsworth onto the next level. So also the Barberton basketball team had a hard-fought victory against Alliance last Friday. Came back from being 10 under, 10 down, and came out with the victory. Also want to thank everyone who put together or participated in the involvement fair yesterday. It was a great turnout, great first step. Met quite a few people who are presently not involved, but are newer to the city. So I want to make sure that we can do what we can to get them involved. So I thought that the mix of participants as well. So you had government bodies, you had youth athletic associations, you had ethnic social clubs, you had nonprofits, the Summit County Health Department. So not everything was Barberton, but most of it was. So I thought it was a good mix of participants there. Want to once again welcome W Construction to Barberton on Norton Avenue, new business in town. Just had their grand opening and open house this past Thursday. If you didn't get a chance to stop by, very, very impressive operation there. And so we're going to be setting up some business visits with them to see what we can do to help them. You know, like most places, employees, it's tough to get qualified employees, right? So we're going to do what we can to help them out here. So really poised for some future growth here in the community. The Newell Street project is moving forward, and again, this is one of those projects that we'll continue to update you on, continue to communicate with the schools and the foundation on this project. So constant communication with them. I know that came up a few weeks ago, is to make sure that, you know, try not to interrupt or disrupt the unloading and loading of kids right at the intersection of Newell and Norton. And so we've worked with the schools, and that project continues. Trying to be cognizant of time, I apologize. Continuing the discussion of electrical aggregate and power demand. This is a growing need in this, not in Barberton, but the entire country. You know, we're not used to rolling blackouts or anything like that, like out west. But, you know, whether it's the demand that's out there and the lack of power generation is huge around here. So you talk about data centers, you talk about the chip plant down towards Columbus, you talk about manufacturing. All these places need increased power, and presently it's not there. And that's nothing that you or I can do right now. We can lobby and advocate for it, but I know that it's on the priority list for power companies. How do we get more power and energy and generate that so we can, down the road, have more economic development and greater jobs and move forward. So that's going to continue to be an issue moving forward. Lastly, this Friday is a spaghetti dinner at Prince of Peace for the Esther Ryan Shoe Fund, so I hope to see you all there. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second that motion to adjourn.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Didn't think so? Oh, one.
What if we said
You be that guy. This meeting is adjourned at 9:30.